Hello, I'm Bret Moss, and you're watching The Defining Moment for Creating the Culture of Conscience. Our guest today is Shawn McCarthy. Shawn is a senior at the University of California, Los Angeles, where he's majoring in psychobiology. He's also a native Californian. Shawn McCarthy, welcome back to The Defining Moment. Thanks for coming back to our studio today.
Yeah, it's great to be here again.
Our topic today is Transcending the Conspiracy of Low Moral Standards. And I'd like to begin by asking you to share a defining moment from your own life, which was valuable in defining your own moral values.
Well, for me, I grew up to believe in the principles of abstinence before marriage and fidelity within marriage. And there was an experience, or actually a talk, that I heard at a summer camp I went to when I was in middle school, which really helped me to understand that for myself. And the talk was about a diamond ring. And it was basically an analogy. So each person has a diamond ring, and eventually when you get married, this is the diamond ring that you're going to give to your spouse, whoever that may be. The thing is, when you become involved romantically with other people, then it's kind of like you're scuffing your ring. You're getting a little dirt on it and giving it little scratches and stuff, you know? And so later when you give that ring to your spouse, it's not going to look as nice. And if you go so far as to have premarital sex with somebody that isn't your wife, then it's like exchanging your diamond ring for a glass one. And so that's why it's important to refrain from being involved in other romantic relationships besides one with your wife. And the reason that for all this, you might ask, why does being in a relationship with somebody else, why does that scratch your diamond ring? Why does having premarital sex cause you to have a glass ring instead of a diamond ring? And it's because we are more than just physical beings, we're also spiritual beings. And I believe that, each person has a spirit, and that you're only meant to be in a romantic relationship with one other person. Because when you are married and when you do have sexual relations, it's the union of two different people. It's two different people coming together as one. And it's not just your physical bodies, but your spiritual bodies as well, coming together as one. And so if you're doing that with somebody besides your wife, then, after you get out of that relationship, it's kind of like you're breaking apart. And that's not something that's easy. It's like you're tearing your soul apart. And it's going to leave a scar on your soul, an imprint. And especially if you do go so far as to have premarital sex, it's like a part of that person that you had sex with is left on your soul, and a part of your soul is left with them. And so when you do end up in that final conjugal relationship, your soul isn't pure anymore. It's muddled. And you're going to bring in this kind of emotional, spiritual baggage from your past relationships into this one. And that doesn't mean that it won't work out. It's just going to make it that much harder. So yeah, that analogy of the diamond ring is one of the things that has helped me to kind of understand why I should follow these standards.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. What's the difference between romantic love and true love?
Well, I feel that true love is something that you build. A lot of people talk about, falling in love. But I feel like that's what romantic love is. It's something that you fall in, but that you can also fall out of because you haven't really invested anything into it. True love isn't something that you just kind of you're walking along and all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's true love. That's not, anything that's worth having is something that you have to work to build. And so, romantic love is nice because it's that initial feeling of, puppy love kind of thing. and maybe it'll help you to get to that level of true love, but that's not really what real love is. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, which is why, they see somebody and all of a sudden they're excited and they think they're in love, but then something happens and all of a sudden they're in love with somebody else. That's not true love. True love is something that you build and that is constant and that keeps growing.
Okay, and what does it require? It
requires work. It's not something that, like I said, it's not something that just comes about easily. If you're building a skyscraper, you want to build it on like a good solid foundation. So that's kind of like what you're doing with true love, is you're building a good solid foundation for your relationship. And the way you do that is by working with your spouse to kind of support each other. When you enter into a relationship, it's important that you don't go into this kind of love relationship just thinking about your own wants and your own desires, your own, you can't go into it with a selfish attitude, because then as soon as you stop getting what you want, you're going to be tired of it and you want to move on. Instead, what you need to do is go into it with a giving relationship, that you want to live your life for this other person, and that this other person wants to live their life for you. And so by having that give and take of, you're constantly giving to this person, they're giving to you, you're working together and you're building that bond. And the more you give to each other, the stronger that bond becomes. And the reason that it's especially important not to have premarital relations is because part of that bond is trusting the other person and trusting yourself. And if you or the other person has had relationships with other people that have broken up or gone awry, then they're going to bring that baggage, and it's going to be harder to trust them because they've already broken up that kind of relationship with somebody else. You can still develop that bond, but it's just going to be harder. You're going to have more obstacles to overcome.
Okay. Very clear. Thank you. Why are high moral standards important to you, and how did you come to discover the value of upholding them?
I'm living my life for something greater. I'm living my life for the long run. I'm not just living for the now. Moral standards are something that you decide on and that you live your life by. And you're not letting other people, or you're not letting society decide who you are. You're deciding who you are. You're making your own decisions. And by living by a moral standard, you're living for something greater than just the now. A lot of people, I think, live for whatever makes them happy in the moment, for temporary satisfaction, temporary gratification. But that's what they are. They're just temporary. By following a moral standard, you're living for, or at least what I believe is that you're living for a more eternal, a more real joy that you'll find not in the now, but in the future.
And it can be also now too, right?
It can be now.
It should be now too. There's nothing wrong with that.
And yeah, because if you're not living by a moral standard, you're just kind of like letting yourself, you're just following what society and the people around you want.
If it feels good, do it.
Right. And then you're not really making your own decisions. You're not in control of your life. Mm-mm. By having a moral standard, that gives you power because you're the one making the decisions, not the people around you, not television, not the magazines. When people think about moral standards, they see it as like rules that they have to follow. I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. And especially for teenagers who want to be independent, they want to make their own decisions, and they just see it as rules that, and they don't want to be inhibited, they don't want to be restricted by rules. But they're not rules. They are in a sense, but they're more than rules. There's a reason for them. It's, parents tell their kids, don't touch the stove because it's hot. And kid's like, well, that's a rule, so he wants to break it, so he goes and touches a stove, and what happens? He gets burned. Similarly, like when I was talking before, and when I was describing about what true love is and how to have, that kind of like true love in a relationship, the reason that you shouldn't engage in premarital sex, that you should follow standards, is because in the end it's better for you. The reason that you shouldn't go and do drugs is because, yeah, it might make you happy in the moment, but it also might cause you to do something that could screw up your life. And that might not necessarily happen, but it's better not to run the risk. So by following moral standards, you might miss out on the now, but really you're saving yourself, and you'll find out that you're actually not missing out. That actually by following a standard, then you have something to be proud of within yourself, and you'll feel much more powerful and much happier because of it.
Okay, great, thanks. How great is the price most young people are paying by either ignoring or simply being ignorant of the role morality plays in life?
Well, one, they're not in control of their own life. They think they are because, they're doing whatever they want. But actually, what they're doing is more what society tells them is good, what society tells them is fun, what their peers tell them is cool to do. And so they're actually almost being brainwashed in a sense as to doing what they think is good, but actually in the end it can hurt them. The price that young people are paying can be seen if you just look out in the news and the media. If you look out around you at the people around you, you see young people who, instead of waiting until they're married to have sex, they're having premarital sex. And what's happening? You have a high number of teen pregnancies, which isn't always necessarily bad, but it's better to wait for the right time to be pregnant. And also, one of the leading causes of death in the world is AIDS. It's a huge epidemic in the world, and a lot of it is caused by premarital sex. So there's those issues. There's also the issue of, or at least what I think is happiness. By not following a moral standard and just doing whatever you want, you're sacrificing true happiness for temporary gratification. The main part of what I mean by that is, again, has to go back to the person that you're going to spend the rest of your life with, the person that you're going to marry. That's one area where true happiness lies. And the more that you save yourself for that relationship, the more meaning it's going to have. And through that relationship, that's where you're really going to feel happiness. And anything that you do, that might involve being in relationships outside of that, romantic relationships outside of that, can hurt that relationship. And so, I might have a girlfriend now, and yeah, that might be a lot of fun now, but then, when we break up later and I go and marry somebody else, I'm going to have that baggage from that initial relationship. And so I might have been happy in that moment, but it's going to make my future real relationship, where I'm really going to find true happiness, that much harder. So one analogy that I've used before to tell my friends is, during high school, I took these classes called advanced placement classes or honors classes. And they're a lot more work than just regular classes. And so why would you do more work now instead of just going and having fun with your friends? And the reason is because by taking these harder classes, it's going to help you to get into a better college, which will then lead you to you getting a better job. So similarly, right now, I might not be going and having fun with just whoever I want and just, flirting and having girlfriends and all these things now. But because I'm not doing that, I'm saving myself for this one person that I'm going to marry eventually. And it's almost like the job, I'm going to be able to get a better job because I waited and worked hard until I got to college and got the better job. Similarly, by waiting until I get married, I'm going to feel a lot more happiness and joy because of it. One other thing, too, is I've been talking a lot about how by not giving into these temptations when I'm young, I'm not experiencing temporary gratification. And so it might seem like, oh, I'm not having any fun now. My life is boring. But actually, it's more the opposite, because relationships are a lot of work. And, they take a lot of time. And if things don't work out, emotionally, you might become a wreck. It might mess up your life. It's going to take money. And, while in high school, it's better to just go and have fun playing sports, playing with, hanging out with your friends, being involved in, these kinds of other things rather than being stuck in a relationship.
Why is it unpopular to be a person who upholds moral values in today's society?
It's basically going against what society teaches us is cool and is popular. Society teaches us that society is all about, sex appeal. Everything is related to, how can I be more attractive? And so following a moral standard isn't necessarily in line with that. It's more almost going in the opposite direction. So you're clashing with what's popular by following a moral standard. And so, that's why it's seen as uncool. Also because society is like that, because the media is like that, you think that you're the only one that might be following this kind of standard. But actually, people will respect you for it when you tell them about it. I know for me, when I told my friends about that I have this standard I'm following, people were amazed, and they gave me a lot of respect for it. And I also found out that there were a lot of people that actually agreed with those kind of beliefs and standards. And by following them myself, other people feel inspired to do the same. And so I feel like if people are able to follow those standards and are able to tell other people that they're following these standards, they'll actually gain a lot more support because they'll realize that there are a lot more people than they thought there might be that are also agree with the same ideas. So there was one thing that happened to me during high school that kind of helped me to realize all these things I'm talking about moral standards. And that was I became friends with this one person during my junior year. There's me and 3 other people, and we all became really good friends in one of my classes. And there was one of the friends was a guy and the other 2 were girls. And I told them about, that I have these standards that I live by, that I believe in abstinence before marriage, that I believe in fidelity within marriage. And I would wear this ring on my finger that said true love waits to show that I believed in these values. And they were really impressed by it. But it never really, to me, this is how I'd been living, so it wasn't too big of a deal. And, they were just my friends, and we had a lot of fun together. But I didn't actually realize how much it affected other people. And what happened was, the next year when I graduated, my friend sent me an email and about all these things that had happened to her that I had no idea that were going on. And what she talked about was that when she was younger, she had a boyfriend and things didn't work out, and it affected her really deeply. And it really caused her a lot of misery and pain in her life. And she basically had thought that she would never find a guy who was worth being in a relationship with because she thought all guys were shady. And then she talked in her email about how when she met me, it was really amazing to her to find somebody who was at her intellectual level and who had these standards and beliefs, and not only had standards and beliefs, but actually lived by them, that followed them. and how I just thought we were just, we were really good friends. But she says that I helped to kind of revitalize her faith in men, that, there are guys out there who might follow this kind of standard. And for me, that was really shocking, because I never thought, here I am, I'm just kind of following what I believe in. But here, without even realizing it, I affected somebody really deeply in their life. And so yeah, I think that goes to show that you really never know how much living by a standard can show to other people until you find about their real story.
That's a beautiful example. Thank you. From your vantage point as a university student, how strong is the influence on young people to have sex before marriage?
Well, as a young person, you're really into what your friends are doing, and you really want to be accepted and to be cool, to be looked up to by your friends. And in order to do that, you look to what's popular in society. And what's popular in society is all about sex appeal, about looking good, about attracting a member of the opposite sex. And so the way we look, the clothes we wear, the movies we watch, even the food we eat sometimes, it's all about, what looks good, about sex appeal. And so there's this constant drive, this constant temptation that you're surrounded by to have sex, whether it's premarital or whether it's sex outside of marriage. And yeah, again, especially as a young person, you're trying to look cool and do what's cool, and what's cool is, sex appeal. And another thing too is, especially as a guy, in high school and college, guys always talk about, they might ask you, have you had sex yet? Or, are you still a virgin? And if you're a virgin, there's this connotation that, you're not really a man yet. And so for guys, you have your pride, your manhood, and so you want to, seem manly to everybody else. So there's a push there to have sex as well. And so it's really hard to avoid all that when everything around you is driving you in this direction.
Okay, very clear, thanks. Sometimes it's not enough to want to be a good person or to want to maintain high moral standards, because the temptations can be too great. What do you believe makes the biggest difference in allowing young people to have the moral fortitude to simply say, no, thank you?
I feel that there's three things. The first is your family and your faith. I feel like those are can be a foundation for you and for your life. Because your family is where you grow up and where you learn about the world. And so if your family supports you in your moral principles and they live by it themselves, then that can be a very strong stepping stone to keep going through your life. And also with your faith, a lot of faiths have those ideals of having moral standards of, abstinence before marriage, fidelity within marriage, and all these things. And so if you're really involved in your faith, you have a very strong faith, then that will help you as well. But at the same time, when you're a young person, you're in that kind of searching mode, learning to be independent from your family, so that's not always enough. So the second thing is your environment. Your environment is what influences you. It can influence you a lot more than you realize. And the normal environment that we live in is, again, one of, what sells, and what sells is sex appeal. So if you can change your environment to one that can be more supportive for you, that can really help a lot. So one thing is the friends you have. That's really important, the friends you have. If you can find friends that support you in your beliefs, that have the same beliefs as you do, then together you become that much stronger. There's strength in numbers. I know for me, that's really one of the main things that I feel has kept me going. And I almost feel like God has been guiding me to the people I become friends with, because they're a really strong, integral part of me getting to where I am today. Yeah, because there are people who also were into upholding these kind of standards. And along with environment is also just, paying it what kind of magazines you read, what TV shows you watch, what music you listen to. All these things really affect you. And if you're listening to things that are all about, sex and drugs and all these things, then that's going to influence you. That's going to make it that much harder to resist that temptation. And the third thing is having a vision, having a goal in mind of where you want to get. Why are you upholding these moral standards? Why are you going against society? Why are you doing the thing that sometimes may be uncool? What are you trying to get at? To have a vision. For me, that vision is having a family. That's really my ultimate goal in life, is to have a family. And I know that when I get married, I want to be able to tell my wife that, I've saved myself my whole life up for you. And also, to be able to be that kind of role model and example for your children, because I'm sure you don't want your children in the future to live that kind of lifestyle either. So by having a vision, it's kind of like you can see your destination, and it'll make it easier to reach it.
Okay, great. What's the value in demonstrating both to yourself and to God that you can be trusted to overcome temptations and maintain your moral integrity?
Well, one of them is ultimately your happiness, because I feel like only by doing so can you really achieve true happiness, because of what I've talked about before. Another thing is when you're able to have a standard that you follow, it gives you a lot of power. When you are just giving into temptation, it makes you weaker, because you're not really doing. You might think that's what you want to do, but you're really just giving into the temptations of the society around you, what the society makes look good. You're giving into that. And in resisting it, you give strength to your character, strength to your person. And I think that will really help you to develop your character and to do much greater things in your life. If you think about people that have really done great things in their lives, that really have affected history, as people that have a lot of strength of character. And strength of character isn't grown by, just giving into whatever's going on around you.
Okay, great. Well, Shawn, I want to thank you so much for being our guest again in the Defining Moment. I really enjoy listening to you share about what's valuable, what's important to you, and the way you live your life. Thank you so much for being our guest.
Yeah, it was a pleasure.
You've been watching The Defining Moment for Creating the Culture of Conscience. You can find us on the internet at www.definingmoment.tv. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.